Hey everyone, my name is Wedge, and this is the first tournament preview of New Standard. Let's get you ready for Friday Night Magic. Today we're going to talk about two decks that have been destroying Magic Online dailies since Pro Tour Theros. It's important to be prepared when going into this weekend's tournaments. Mono Black Devotion and White Blue Black Control decks are stomping right now. While this won't be as in-depth as a deck tech, it should provide an overview of the strategy so you at least know what you're up against and should prepare for. The first strategy we're going to look at is Mono Black Devotion. This deck has seen a ton of Magic Online play since Pro Tour Theros. Unlike its Mono Blue counterpart, this particular build is more control-oriented. Its creature base is made up of Desecration Demon, Grave Merchant of Asphodel, Lifebane Zombie, and Pack Rat. The Demon is just a great all-around creature, and he provides 2 devotion. He helps against aggro decks by slowing them down a bit, and is great against control decks that can't afford to sacrifice creatures. The Grave Merchant represents one of the best uses of devotion in Theros. Everyone knew this card was amazing and limited, and there's no reason it shouldn't see play here. The life swing that this guy can create will put you ahead in almost any situation. One cool interaction is when you copy Pack Rats. A lot of people ask this question, so I'll answer it. When you make a copy of Pack Rat, its converted mana cost is the same as the original. While it is a token, it's a token that's a copy of Pack Rat. Now, normally the only reason creature tokens have no mana cost is because none is specified when they're created. But here, the tokens are Pack Rat copies, and mana cost, included colored symbols, is an attribute that can be copied. The token copies are literally the same as Pack Rat in all respects, which means exactly what you think it means. Devotion engine for days! The only way Mono Black can survive as a strategy right now is because of its removal package, so be careful running big creatures into it. It runs Devour Flesh, Doomblade, and Hero's Downfall main deck. The rest of the spells are Thoughtseize and Underworld connections for hand manipulation, and Whip of Erebos to bring back Grey Merchants. This deck is really powerful. If you find yourself up against it, you'll probably know soon enough. It won't have any plays before turn 3, but if your opponent plays Pack Rat, you know it's only a matter of time. A disadvantage for this strategy is that it is a bit slow to get going. Again, no play until turn 3 can be detrimental. In addition, it doesn't have access to any board wipes, so don't be afraid to flood the battlefield before they can hit their removal. You're going to want to beat this deck quickly. You can usually tell what scares a deck based on its sideboard. A playset of Pharika's Cure shows a clear concern for aggro decks and mono red. A playset of Duress probably comes in against the control matchups, as board wipe is pretty good against a devotion deck. This deck doesn't want the game to go too quickly, so it will try to tempo out. If you can, you should take the offensive and apply as much pressure as possible early game. If you're playing a control strategy, getting a Ratchet Bomb into play, then ticking it up to 3 and just leaving it there is a sound strategy. The deck doesn't have the best matchup against pure aggro decks, but if it can stabilize the board, it'll probably win. I can see this deck having some issues with the junk mid-range type of strategy. The Doomblades become worthless, and their hand is just as susceptible to Thoughtseize and Duress as anyone else. If you pick up this strategy, remember to take your time and stabilize the board. Don't get too worried if your opponent gets the early advantage. That's all part of the plan. And above all, enjoy it. This is a very cool deck and looks really fun to play. The second deck we're looking at today is Esper, or White Blue Black Control. Next to Mono Black Devotion, this strategy has been the next dominant deck in Magic Online. With 4-0 finish after 4-0 finish, there has to be something amazing here, so let's take a look. While this is a 3-color deck, Theros lands are very kind to it. In addition to the 3 on-color shocks, Godless Shrine, Hallowed Fountain, and Watery Grave, there are also 2 playsets of Temple of Deceit and Silence. This makes the mana base very stable. Good place to start. The deck runs 1 creature. By that I don't even mean multiple copies of 1 creature, I mean 1 single creature. Aetherling, just 1. Could this deck be more control? Since there are no other creatures in the deck, 33 spells fill the rest of it, from Azorius Charm to Dissolve, and from Elspeth Sun's Champion to Jace Architect of Thought. This deck seems to be running 3-color good stuff. Think about it. For black spells, it runs Thoughtseize, Doomblade, and Hero's Downfall. For white spells, it's Elspeth Champion. For blue, it's Dissolve, Divination, and Jace Architect of Thought. Gold spells being used are Azorius Charm, Detention Sphere, Sphinx's Revelation, and Supreme Verdict. These are all some of the best cards in each of their respective colors. That's what this deck is. It's the best white, blue, and black cards in Standard right now. That's what you're up against. The deck just stalls until late game using Detention Sphere, Azorius Charm, kill spells, and board wipe. Once you've run out of gas, it drops Elspeth or plays a huge Revelation and takes complete control. These types of decks are always dangerous once the builders have figured out the right combination of cards. Control isn't often seen right when a new Standard starts because it has to evaluate the competition. Esper doesn't care. Its control package is so strong it can fight anything. Something to note about this particular list is that it is only maining one Detention Sphere. This is probably because there's a playset of Hero's Downfall to take care of the bothersome walkers. In particular, Domri Raid is a nightmare for this deck. Control decks are always afraid to fight aggro, as they should be, but with Domri in play, the game is even more unfair. Since this deck is a little slower than the mono black deck we just looked at, I would love to give the advice to just board vomit and swing until you can't anymore, but that's difficult here. Unlike mono black, this deck has access to Supreme Verdict. Most of these matchups are won or lost on a top deck board sweep. Strategies like mono red or green red aggro do not recover well from board wipe, hence the need for walkers. If you're playing against this deck, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Either you're an aggro deck and you win on turn 4, 5, or 6, or you're a control mid-range deck that has to wait out for the long game. Mid-range seems to be really strong here as all of your big creatures require immediate answers. Creatures like Desecration Demon keep the pressure on while not costing much mana and representing a fast clock. If we take a look at the sideboard, this deck is afraid of mono red. Soldier of the Pantheon is a beast against Rakdos Cackler. Negate is awesome against most spells in mono red and the walkers in either red-green aggro decks or control mirrors. In addition, this card comes in against every control deck ever. Remember, if you are playing a control deck as well, Esper is going to be boarding out a lot of cards, so expect a ton of hate. For some additional options in the sideboard, I would suggest Far and Away for aggro matchups. This can be a nice 2-for-1 with the right mana. In addition, you can never go wrong with Ratchet Bombs, ever. The last card I'll suggest is one that was taken from the Esper deck that made a splash at the Pro Tour, Glare of Heresy. Depending on your local metagame, this card could be stellar or terrible. Against Elspeth, any Boros deck, or any Naya deck, this card is crazy good. Exiling is a powerful effect to have in Standard right now, and this card does it really well. Mono Black Devotion and Esper Control are two strategies that are sure to pop up at events this weekend. Make sure you're prepared to deal with all of their shenanigans. As always, subscribe below for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.